little bit less conferencey, a little bit more like we're hanging out in the hallways. And I love Scott, and I wanted to pull him aside and ask him some questions, and you all get a chance to. And so I've got some seed questions to get the conversation going, but if you feel inclined, come on, hang out with us. If you don't, hang out in Zoom or hang out in YouTube, no skin off my back. But if you are going to hang out in YouTube, YouTube, hit that subscribe button so that we can, you don't miss any more of our content when it comes out in the next couple of weeks here. Scott is one of my favorite podcast hosts, guests. You're author of The Forecast, which I'm going to ask you about a little bit. Sales Hacker OG. I don't know what the best way to describe you there is, and then evangelist at Outreach. That's a lot of things, man. Our team wrote out, all these other awards, but we don't have, 25 minutes for me to read out all the accomplishments. And so I'm curious, we're talking about how to build community, and Kelly just joined. So Kelly, come on in, say hello. And if anybody else is in YouTube, come on in and say hello. I'm Colin. This is Scott. Scott, welcome. Kelly, welcome.
Hi.
Kelly.
How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks for hanging out.
Wasn't expecting to actually be welcomed right there and then there. Just clicked impulsively.
Totally.
Hey.
I'm going to click a link and suddenly we're hanging out on YouTube with a whole bunch of people.
Yeah, right? Kind of cool.
Hey, this is awesome. It's kind of cool. We get to actually see chat. So I see John been asking a bunch of questions. Man.
What's up, John?
How's it going, man?
Hey, how's it going? Awesome. I love the content so far. It's been awesome to watch the summit.
Sweet. Thanks. Caesar, what's up? Kelly, Sachi, right on. All right. So anybody have a question for Scott that you want to lead off with, or do we go right with the pre-planned ones? Panic. I'm like, where did I write those pre-planned ones?
I'll jump in. Why don't I kick it off? I'll get the ball rolling because I think this format itself lends so beautifully to this topic, right? We have a bunch of people on here, and I'm only one person, and I have some answers that I've collected along my journey, but I don't have all of them. And it lends very nicely to this topic because we're talking about community, and what better format than to have a little micro community that we have right now. So I can give a little bit of a background. You gave me a background, but specifically around this topic, and then feel free to anyone just interject, and maybe I'll push some thoughts back to the community as well, because we'd love everyone's feedback on this. So as Colin mentioned, I've been super lucky in my career to help build Sales Hacker, one of the biggest communities out there. We were acquired by Outreach in 2018. Simultaneously helped build their podcast, which in itself can be seen as a community, and also grew the Revenue Collective chapter in my hometown of Vancouver. And most recently grew my newsletter, The Forecast, super rapidly. So there's kind of this red thread throughout my career that is always community driven. And for me, it's opened an absolute incredible amount of doors. It accelerated my career by a number of years. And I can tie it directly to multiple millions of dollars that I've been able to bring in for the various organizations I've been a part of. And I think anyone can do it. And we're seeing right now this explosion of community, right? There's Sales Hacker, there's Revenue, there's Rev Genius, there's MSP, there's AAISP, there's all these communities. I'm talking about sales communities, but in every persona that you sell into, there's going to be these communities. And I think some of what I want to touch on today, and we'll talk through, is simultaneously there's been this explosion of, call it, personal branding. And there's some people that are trying to build their own brand, and then there's people out there trying to build community. And building your brand is serving yourself, and building community is serving others. And in turn, you're going to kind of get this brand and be seen as the guy who can, or guy or gal who can make those connections and make things happen. So that's part of what I think I want to talk to today, is how we can all do that for our various personas, because we don't all sell into salespeople. I understand that. But yeah, would love to hear anyone in the audience who's with us right now, how you view community, how you view this topic, and answer any questions that you guys have, as specific as you want to go, and I'll do my best to answer them.
Hey, Scott, John here. I love the concept of of community, but I was wondering too, I think a key part of that is maybe culture. I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about your thoughts on how kind of culture plays a part in the communities that you've developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, that's huge. I guess I'll speak to that in two ways, of like kind of the benefits of community, which foster culture, and then maybe the disadvantages of building community that can actually hinder kind of culture, and maybe things you have to watch out for. Because I don't think spending 5 hours a day in a community spinning your wheels is like a good thing to do, and just getting positive reinforcement from, you know, people that might not be where you want to go. So I think the benefits are, you know, I think everyone has this fundamental need that they want to level up, you know, and they want to belong. So that is the great part of community, is that can happen, and you can meet people that will honestly change your life and the trajectory of your career. Now, the disadvantage, and that is good, that's the culture that you want to build. The disadvantage is a lot of times you can create little echo chambers. And there's a great quote by Stephen Covey, if I can remember it. It's based along the lines of strength lies in differences, not in similarities, right? So when we create these communities, we need to make sure that diversity of thought, race, gender, you name it, is top of mind, because we don't just want to create these echo chambers where everyone thinks the same as we do. Second part you need to watch out for when you're looking to build culture and community is, let's also make sure we're not confusing visibility with credibility, which we see a lot on LinkedIn and within these communities. Just because someone, you know, has a lot of followers or is extremely active does not mean that you should be following everything they say, even though sometimes that feedback loop can feel good. You get that like dopamine hit of like, oh, cool, we're helping, we're doing this. So I would just say on that one, make sure you're checking your sources. And if someone isn't where you want to be in 5 or 10 years, then you shouldn't be taking advice from them. So those are some things to watch out for when you look at culture of a community. Did that answer your question? Great question, by the way.
That was awesome. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. You have any other questions from the audience? I can go through some kind of actions to take, some actionable steps of how I think you can go about building your own communities that will help accelerate your career, unless there's some specific questions out there.
So, hey, this is Caesar Cruz. I'm in Portland, Oregon. Hey, so thanks for coming on here, obviously, but I really wanted to hear your thoughts on commenting on these thought leaders that are constantly posting on LinkedIn, right? Because
yeah,
and I think that's what you would refer to as brand building, personal brand building, right?
Yeah.
And I don't always agree with everything that's being said, you know, by individuals.
Yep.
And lately, I've been a little vocal about that, a little more vocal about disagreements. I just don't know if that's the forum for it, right? But at the same time, you know, the lower self, you know, for me, wants to do the personal brand building because I want, you know, the next big opportunity, right? I want to be recognized. I want all of these things that my ego wants, essentially.
Yeah.
What do you, what's your opinion on those types of actions within sales, LinkedIn? Sorry.
Yeah. Excellent question. I think it's a lot of people are thinking that question that you asked, and I'll go back and kind of underscore something I said earlier, which was the quote from Stephen Covey, which strength lies in differences, not in similarities. So we do need opposing opinions, and these people do need to be challenged, and every idea out there needs to be challenged, right? That's how it gets better. And then they might challenge you back, and your viewpoint could change. You know, you might not have all the answers either. so I think it's okay to poke back respectfully. I'm always a fan of doing that. I would personally probably send them a message. If you're truly out there and not trying to break them down publicly, you're trying to get to a better outcome and a better understanding. Probably easier to shoot them a message privately and be like, hey, do you actually see this works for you? Because I'm seeing the opposite out here. Here's a few of my insights and the data I'm seeing. Would love to match that with yours and see if we could come together with a better solution, and then go present that better solution with them on like another post or something. So that's how I would do that when you have conflicting ideas. And then secondarily, it kind of goes back to what I said. So we all have this need, we all have, you mentioned lower self ego and the I, and like, I want to build my brand and I want to get to the next level. The crazy thing about that I have found is try and switch that mentality to, I want to build a personal brand, to I want to help others and build a community. And by helping others and building a community and doing that, so you are posting, I think you should post on LinkedIn. Absolutely. Everything you're posting is to help other people, not to build your brand. It's a small distinction, but I think that mental switch does have an impact on how it's perceived by the collective. Did that answer your question? Great question.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thanks, man.
It's a great reply too, because it's so easy to get trapped in that, like, oh, I'm just doing this for the ego. But if you're taking that, and I can't remember, it was a sales book, or it could have even been like the Covey stuff, like How to Win Friends. Like if you're genuinely trying to help others and you use that as like, this is the lens that I see the world through. It's one of the reasons why we started doing we were doing events at our office back when you still could, is the reason why we were publishing. We put so much effort into the podcast is we genuinely wanted to help, and we knew we had a big community. And so it's that sort of like that genuine approach to being helpful, whether it's, you're somebody at a company and you can do these events, or whether you're an individual on LinkedIn posting and trying to help others and have a real conversation. And I think the distinction there is huge, right? It can be subtle, but if you're doing it for your ego, you're out there trying to like show everybody that you know your stuff, right? And then that's this like manufactured conflict of like, oh, I'm the smartest and this and that, and it comes across as real. You can kind of tell when somebody's posting from their ego. When they're posting to be genuinely helpful, it tends to be a lot softer, a lot less 100% sure. It's like, well, here's my perspective, or here's what we're seeing. I don't think I added anything new there. I just thought what you said was so important.
No, that was awesome. I think it comes down to intent. And the other quote I love is, the smartest people know that they know nothing at all, or something like that. So if you think you 100% and it's black and white and you have the right answer, then you're probably wrong. Everything's a massive shade of gray, and everything's evolving, and we're learning new things every day. So yeah, just get out there, experiment, start helping people, and you'll see some reward.
Yeah, I love that message. And to be honest, it's such a subtle shift in thinking that for someone like me, I need to hear it, pretty frequently, just so that I get back to that mentality. But yeah, thank you.
Welcome, man. Great question.
Yeah, thanks for coming to hang out. Looks like we had a few new faces joining here. I love that Quincy, part of the PandaDoc team, or at least wearing the PandaDoc hat, hanging out in our roundtable and not the company sponsored one.
Oh, well, I thought it was the company sponsored roundtable. My bad.
You're not allowed to leave though.
Yeah.
Okay. No,
that would just be rude, Quincy.
Yeah, man.
You're stuck with us now.
Yeah, I actually.
This is a cool format, by the way. I think this is the first time I've seen this
hear
format.
some insights. Yeah. Thanks for setting this up.
Yeah, we're trying to solve for like how do we replicate that feeling of like, my favorite part of every conference I've ever been to was that moment a speaker walks off stage, and then the swarm around them where they're like, hey, I want to ask questions. I'm like,
that community component, one could say.
Oh, subtle plug.
Some meta stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had lots of conversations, and this is the next iteration of what our team came up with. So yeah, I'm curious for feedback and thoughts. It's kind of strange streaming all this on YouTube, and then being like, hey, come jump in the Zoom. But yeah,
Cool, man. I can go over a couple. How much time do we have left? We have 10 more minutes or so.
Yeah, I think we got some more time. Let me just double check my schedule here.
Cool.
Certainly got more time.
Sweet. If there's no more questions, I'll just keep kind of banging out a few things, and hopefully some of them will be valuable to some folks on here. So like some real like actions to take. So kind of like how I did it, and how anyone can do it, is first you kind of have to go and identify where your personas are living. So there's a million different places. Depending on who you sell to, it could be Facebook, could be LinkedIn groups, could be a blog. Like blogs still exist. There's big blogs out there. Could be a forum, could be a Slack group. I remember I was consulting for a company once who I was talking about this concept, and they're like, "Oh no, we sell into dentists. So like this, they don't live on LinkedIn. They don't have a community. Like we can't do any of this." I was like, "Okay, one sec." And I'm pretty sure I went and typed in dentist group on LinkedIn, and there was like 60,000 dentists as part of this group. It just wasn't overtly you were seeing it in like your feed. So, it goes down to this fundamental need that everyone's trying to level up. So your persona is leveling up somewhere. You just need to find out where that is. And then you need to start showing up there and posting intelligently and thoughtfully. I would suggest actually no branded materials for at least the first like 3 months. Like just find other sources of information, give your viewpoint on how you see the world. And like these people basically should not even know you're a seller or a marketer. You're just like helpful guy or gal who shows up and answers questions. And your thought there is you're always trying to give more than you receive. That's kind of it. From there, you're going to start building these connections that will ultimately turn into opportunities and turn into revenue. I've seen it firsthand. And then sometimes when I say this, people are genuinely like, "No, there is no community out there for my people." Then you have the greatest opportunity in front of you, known to the world. You can create your own community, and it's so simple. It's as simple as throwing up a WordPress blog site and going and interviewing the personas that you sell into. You don't have to have all the answers. You just facilitate the answers through practitioners and practitioner-led content. And then over time, people start equating you as the guy who has or guy or gal who has all the answers, even though you're just the answer facilitator, essentially. So that you can build your own community, which is pretty cool. And you can use some of these other communities or LinkedIn to kind of funnel your own. And then over time, owning a community when you're dependent on like independent of LinkedIn is a valuable thing. So once you have a community that trusts you, it gives you a lot of different options, not only to help you hit your revenue goal and whatever you're trying to achieve, but a million different things. Once you have an audience and a community, you decide what to plug into it, and it can be pretty fun. But give more than you take, always.
Totally. And I think that's something that when you look at the Sales Hacker content, that was a big piece of it. You guys did a lot of giving before you started taking anything. Like I don't remember, maybe there were sponsored posts on there in the early days, but as somebody who followed, I met Max very early in his journey. I want to say pre-Sales Hacker, but it's a long time ago. So maybe it's just early days. But man, you guys did, as an organization, did so much giving in the form of content, in the form of putting out these like pieces that really helped build this industry. Like certainly predictable revenue wouldn't have been as popular as it was without the Sales Hacker guys. We had no affiliations with them. They were just doing it to help. We probably should have, helped a bit more, but one of those things that's obvious in hindsight, but not necessarily at the time. But they just did a ton for the community, and you look at the outcome of like eventually their community got bought by, arguably one of the biggest and up and coming sales engagement tools that we're going to see in the next few years. And so pretty cool outcome for something that was started as a community like we're talking about today.
Totally. Thank you, man. And yeah, that was kind of the whole thing. And I often say, this might be the first time in the history of the world that this is true. I don't know, maybe it was always true, but seemingly now more with social and everything beyond the table and more transparent, is if you spend your career helping people get to where they want to go, one day you kind of look around and you're exactly where you want to be too. And it's kind of crazy. And I think my career and the moderate success I've had to date proves that line of thinking is correct.
Totally. I'm going to leave some space for anybody else in the Zoom here. Do you guys have questions? I could pick Scott's brain all day long, but I'll pause for a minute here and let somebody else jump in. Now you're on the spot.
Hey, I got one more question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I love the idea and concept you're talking about, how, creating a community online, about kind of giving, being genuine, asking questions, trying to facilitate just the mind of others. Once you kind of start to develop a platform, do you have any advice on scaling, or is that something you don't really have to think about? Just curious on your thoughts there of, how you kind of manage that growth, or how do you try to bring kind of this community to more and more places?
Great question. So here's one thing I'll share that was an interesting byproduct that, looking back, seems intentional. I don't know if it was, but it seems intentional. And I think a lot of communities could kind of mirror this and copy this. So it goes back to this idea of like practitioner-led content, right? So we were facilitating these conversations with people, whatever the industry is. And over time, when we were giving them a place in the community, it started elevating their brand, right? They started getting more people noticing who they were. They could reach more people. And then they would always kind of reach back with their newfound reach and kind of plug, in our instance, Sales Hacker, our community. So it's this really interesting, like, symbiotic relationship that happens when you give someone a platform. They start growing their brand, and then when you're the one who gave them that brand, they come back and help build your brand. So that was a lot of what happened. A lot of these like sales thought leaders and sales influencers and stuff were really early on Sales Hacker contributors, and it helped them, elevate and reach more and more people, but they never forgot who kind of helped them get there. And I think that really helped us grow as all these little individual brands grew. Our brand grew, which I think is interesting. And I also have some thoughts, which could be another thing of, I think that's how a lot of organizations' marketing will happen in the future, by empowering each individual at their company to build a brand, because people are losing trust in companies and organizations, their marketing. So yeah, some thoughts there. Did that answer your question?
That was awesome. Yeah, thank you. Yes,
Thanks.
Vershu from Toronto, welcome. How are
Hey,
you?
Vershu. Fellow Canadian.
Hi, Scott.
Hey, thanks for joining us.
Not at all.
All right. Did you have a question for Scott? Because I've got one. If you don't, that I'll jump in, but I'll leave you some space here.
No, go ahead.
Cool. So if we're talking about the value of communities, one thing I can speak personally to is the value personally to me that running a podcast created in my life. And just in terms of, if you take dollars and cents off the table, the personal development of running that podcast, I think I'm 160 episodes deep. I think if you looked at me and my sales knowledge before and after, exponential growth in a big way. I'm curious, what were you doing before Sales Hacker, and how has building that community, changed you?
Yeah. To that point, I often say I got paid to get my MBA in sales, basically, by doing all this podcast and interviewing and getting to meet all these interesting people. So funnily enough, before I joined Sales Hacker, so I was running a business development team in Vancouver. It was a SaaS company in the digital asset management space. But I actually leaned on Sales Hacker heavily because that was my first time building out a program from scratch. So I actually leaned on Sales Hacker and was a huge consumer of their content because I had this big knowledge gap of like, I was like, oh yeah, I'm your guy. I can build up this program, but I didn't actually fully know how to do it. So I leaned on the community so heavily. And I remember, Predictable Revenue is one of the books. Trish Bertuzzi's Sales Development Playbook was one of the books, and then a bunch of Sales Hacker stuff. And I would just take all of that stuff, apply it in the real world, and we'd crush our number. And it was mind blowing to me at the time. But I think that's when it really solidified the value of community and information sharing, and this incredible age that we live in now, where you don't have to go and get a 4-year degree, and all of these things that used to be reserved for people with fancy educations and stuff. Now we can get the answers, and they're all at our fingertips. So that's what I was doing before Sales Hacker, and why I was so passionate to come build out the team is because it directly helped me in my career dramatically.
Fantastic. We're going to leave space for one more question, then I got to jump to, we're going to jump shortly to getting ready for Mark Washak with the Sales Insight Labs.
Nice.
Yeah, big, I think I was on his show. I know he's got a big following on YouTube, and I know Mark's going to be joining us in about 5-10 minutes here. He might actually, no, he's not quite here yet. But any last questions for Scott?
Yeah, I do have a question for Scott. And Scott, this is related to what you just said. You are right that nowadays you can learn a lot because we do have the material all around us. The fact of the matter, however, is when you are looking at the sales marketing world, we have sometimes too much material.
Agreed.
So the guy that used that material, how do you go about today? How would you advise people going into it today? How do you sort out what really makes sense and what doesn't? How do you sort through the forest of information that we have to actually get to the right thing?
Excellent question. Really good question. Yeah. What do we call this now? The age of disinformation is what we're living in, or something. There's more wrong information than good information. So great question. I have a super simple kind of proxy that I do. I don't take any advice from someone who is not where I want to be in 5 years or where I want to be in 10 years. It's pretty simple. There's probably some in between, a few nuances there, but if they're not doing directly what I want to do from a lifestyle perspective, or health, or wealth, or love, happiness, whatever you're trying to learn from this person, if they're not exactly where I want to be and have done the things I'm trying to do, keep moving, because there's someone else who will have the right answers for you. So it's an oversimplified version, but it's done pretty well for me.